Welcome on another episode of Creative's Corner. My name is James Dale. I'm your host, and with me is the beautiful, lovely Laura English. How are you today?
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for answering the call. We met at a book signing event at in Avon, and here we are.
Yes.
You know, so tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have lived in Connecticut since I was 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Moved here from Virginia. Love it. I've not left. Love Connecticut. Mm-hmm. I am an audiobook narrator and producer. So I work really specifically with indie authors, mm-hmm. helping them bring their written babies to the audio format. I also worked for Chris Radio for several years. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Chris. Mm-hmm. I now am a consultant there and do volunteer work for them as well. If you're not familiar with Chris Radio, you should be. It's a Connecticut radio reading service, mm-hmm. and it's Connecticut's radio. We basically read anything that's in print. So it's audio format of news and information that your friends, colleagues, classmates, family members have access to, and it's specifically for people who are blind or print mm-hmm. impaired. Mm-hmm. So a lot of our listeners may be arthritic, or they have Parkinson's, or they're dyslexic. For whatever reason, if reading is difficult for people, this is a nonprofit organization. You can subscribe to Chris at no cost and get access to wonderful, wonderful material. So
that's great. So how did you happen to be do audio books, read audio books?
I have been an audiobook fan for mm-hmm. several years, mm-hmm. many years. Mm-hmm. And it was always in the back of my mind, something I thought I would like to do. Mm-hmm. And at the time that I started with Chris as a volunteer, I was working at the Fidelco Guide Dog Foundation. So I was working in the visually impaired community, mm-hmm. and I heard about Chris because people who are blind access Chris, and I heard, what is this radio station? So I thought, if I really want to get into audiobook narration, I should just volunteer at this place and see if I have the chops. So that's what I did. I started volunteering at Chris. Lo and behold, fell in love with audio work and editing. And they offered me a job, and I went to work for them and loved it. With COVID happening, I started an audiobook program for children. It's an audiobook club for children. So I put together book bags with MP3 players, and I would download 4 or 5 books to the MP3 player, and then I would deliver like 40 of them in a bin to a school. It's like a turnkey operation, and children could go up and grab a bag, and they would go and sit in a nice corner and listen to stories or take them home. We've partnered with the Hartford Public Library, also with Besby. I created the Braille audiobook club, so I went to the state library and got all the Braille books they had in stock. Mm-hmm. And our wonderful volunteers at Chris Radio narrated all the stories for us. So that was a really fun project where the kids can listen while they're learning and strengthening their Braille skills.
So you read Braille?
No, the Braille. Mm-hmm. So the volunteer reads the words. Mm-hmm. And so the children are listening to the narration of the book mm-hmm. while they're following along to the Braille mm-hmm. book. Mm-hmm. So it just helps them learn Braille a lot better.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the children are not reading impaired or visual?
They are, okay. Yes, they are. They are mostly blind children, visual impaired children. Blind, a lot of people think blind means complete darkness, but there's very varied levels of blindness. So,
yes.
But yes, children learning Braille, it helps them if they're listening along while they're also trying to learn that skill. And anyway, I just fell in love with audiobooks all over again. And I thought, I really would love to do this. So I started my own business while I was at Chris with the support of the manager there and the executive director. They were very supportive of that. And it was about a year ago that I ended up leaving full-time work at Chris and launching my business 100%. I still volunteer at Chris, and I still work as a consultant for them because they are
That's great.
their
That's
best.
great. That's the place that help you launch your career and get back into what you love. And
it's a wonderful organization.
yes, it is. And most of the things that we as people in a society should do something to give back in whatever medium and whatever discipline that you love, that resonates with you, because it's a feeling of giving back. It's a feeling of community, and you bringing forth another generation, another budding audio book professional to the forefront, who will love doing the work that you do, and that will bring the next generation to love that as well. Because not everybody. I had a niece. God bless her soul. She didn't like reading books off Kindles. She had to have a print book. She said she loved the smell of it, and that helped me to not, when I publish, to just publish a digital copy of a book. I wanted to publish a paper book for people such as herself. And when I published the book, my first copy went to my niece.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Chris in general is a wonderful organization. And, if you out there have anyone in your life that might feel isolated, a lot of older people, they may benefit very much from Chris. They get local news. We read everything from Time Magazine to Smithsonian to Sports Illustrated. And again, that's a free service. The audiobook portion is strictly for the children, the Chris kids, we call them. So, but anyway, www.chrisradio.org.
That's awesome. So you mentioned you started your own business. How is that
I
going?
did. So I started Laura English VO, and I work out of my home. I have a small studio called Evergreen Studios in Simsbury, Connecticut. And I am having a ball. I'm really happy I did it. And it's a great process. I really love working with indie authors. I love helping them bring their print to the audio format. It's a difficult area to navigate. And after going through the publishing, the publishing world, it can be exhausting to say, oh, I have to learn something else. So I really like hand-holding and helping people figure it out. And I offer a lot of different services. I do love to narrate. But I'm not the right voice for every book, and I love to help authors find that right voice if it's not me. So I can recommend other narrators that I know are great communicators. They're going to deliver great files, and you can be trusted with them. I offer post-production services, so if you've already narrated a book, I can help you engineer it, edit it, master it down so that it's ready for retail specs of a distributor of your choice. And I also do author narration. So I will invite an author in to narrate their own book in my studio. And I do the whole production for them, the proofing and the mastering. It's such a huge world. People think, oh, it's just reading. I'm just going to go read.
No, it's not.
But it isn't. It's a lot of work. So I can go through that if you want.
Sure, that's what we hear.
You're going to prep your book, and first you have to audition in most cases. Sometimes you're given a book, but your prep is really key. That's when you actually read the book. I can't tell you how many people ask me, do you read the book before you narrate it?
You have to.
You have to.
Yeah. Gotta get the feel of it and where it's going.
Absolutely.
Know when you're going to be excited. It's acting, pretty much.
It is all acting.
Yes.
And thank you for bringing that up. That was a big part of my journey. Was I have the business acumen, but it was the acting I had to really work on. So I spent years doing acting classes and honing that craft, because it is acting 100%. So the prep is it's key. You're going through the book, you're looking for characters, you're looking for references of that character. So what are other characters saying about specific people? So you can sort of in your mind form who that person is, so that you can create the voice that will bring them to life. You want to look for geographical areas and figure out where the book is set. Just the overall feel of the book, the tone, and where it's going, where the arc of the story is going, and what is the subtext behind what you're reading. After I prep, there's a lot of research that goes into that. There might be pronunciations aren't familiar with, and I have to check those. You meet with the author. if this is an indie project, you would meet with the author and you would go over your questions, say, here's what I was thinking for this, here's what I was thinking for this. And that's a great time for the author to say, well, this is what I was thinking. I sometimes will give a questionnaire to indie authors, and the questionnaire will ask them things like, the age, the education of that character. If they were to play someone in a movie, who would the author pick? What did the author, have in mind when they were writing this character? And that sort of will help me. There's so many key things that could happen. And if you don't prep properly, there could be a very small character in a book, and you've decided to give it a crazy voice, something that's really, sort of stresses your vocal cords, because he only has 2 lines. So why not, right? Come to find out, 3 books later, that dude is the main character of a book.
And then you got to keep up with
And now you have to do that really difficult voice throughout a whole book. So there's so many questions you need to ask and figure out before you make those artistic choices. And after the prep is done, you've talked with the author, you've kind of said, this is where we're going to go. You record what's called the first 15 minutes. And it doesn't necessarily mean the first 15 minutes of a book. You can go through the book and you can find something that might be challenging. The author themselves might say, I would like to hear how you're going to do this scene. So the 15 minutes text is set, you record it. The author then approves it or doesn't approve it. Typically, authors approve, but sometimes they say, no, I really imagined this voice being something different, and they may ask you to do another take. Again, it's very rare that happens, but the 15-minute checkpoint is the time for authors to seriously make a say if they want one, because after that, the narrator now has free rein to artistically make any decision moving forward. So once the book is done, the author can't go back and say, well, I don't like how you did that, or I wish you had done this. So it's something that's, again, the communication and the expectations and the preparation is really key for an author-narrator relationship.
So what is the average time of a project?
Really good question. When I started, it was a long time. It took me about 4.5 hours to do one finished hour. Now I can do basically 2 to 1. So 2 hours. So the prep time, you read the book, prep, meet author, then you get in the booth and you start recording. Again, every narrator's different. I really am not comfortable doing more than 1.5 hours to 2 finished hours a day. So an 8-hour day, an 8-hour book would take me about a week. And I always put in a couple extra days in case landscapers show up. Or I get sick or something happens. Right. So again, you work with those deadlines with your author and you come up with something that is going to work for both of you on the release. As far as payment, that's also a big thing for authors because it can seem extremely expensive to do an audiobook. But in that pricing, and I'll talk about that in a minute, it includes the prep, it includes the narration, but it also includes human proofing. So just if you've had an editor for your book, we're going to have a human proofer listen to what we've narrated to make sure that we were word perfect and didn't make any egregious errors or mispronunciations. And once that person has listened, they create what's called a pickup packet. And they send that pickup packet to us, our narrators, and we go through it and re-record the errors that we made in the original recording. Now you have to hire an engineer. The engineer comes along and they're going to plug in those mistakes and make it sound like they were there all along. And then they're going to master render the audio files so that they meet retail specs of a distributor. And that just means it's going to sound mwah.
So that's pitch and tone and everything.
Pacing, right. And basically just, where do you want the file to sit? You don't want it to be too loud. You want to make sure there's no dog barking in the background or a lot of mouth noises. They take all that stuff out and they make it sound very nice. You don't want to take out breaths unless there's an excessive breather. But you want it to sound natural, like someone is reading to you. So anyway, so then that process takes a while. So again, for an indie book, you're relying on a proofer, you're relying on the engineer's schedule. So you have to take all that into account. I would say it depends on people's schedules. You could turn it around in 2 weeks. You could turn it around in 2 months. If that answers that question.
Yes, it does. Is there a process of how you select a project, or is it based off of referrals, or based off of indie authors seeking you out for your services? Do you have a process of saying, okay, this is not a fit for me, I can't do that based off what the book entails? Do you read it through before you select a project, is what I'm asking?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we audition, or we are sent an audition. So if we audition and we get a synopsis of the book and we feel like this might not be the right fit for us, that's a great time to speak up. It's really smart to say, once an author says, I'd love for you to do my book, it's very smart for you to get that manuscript before you sign a contract and give it a glance over to make sure this is the project that's right for you. Me personally, I love networking and creating relationships, so I try to get out into the book world. I'm also an aspiring writer. Knock on wood. And I know what my voice is good for, and I'm not going to go after, books that just won't be a good fit for me. And I want to resonate a little bit with the book as well. So yeah, I will look for certain stories, or something just might appeal to me. A cover is so important, because a cover is really what's going to grab a narrator's attention first. So it's interesting. But yeah, if there's something that comes up, someone offers me a book and it's not the right fit for me, I'm going to say, listen, I would love to work with you, but this may not be the right project, and I can recommend reputable narrators that would be great to work with on that specific book. So yeah,
that's great. In the indie author's world, I'm an independent published author. The best part of being an independent publisher slash author is networking.
Yes.
Going to different events and putting yourself out there and getting feedback from other independent authors, other authors who went the traditional route and were published, and trying to get information from other people. And you never know who you would meet. It's that person may or may not help you catapult your career, and you, with your information, you may be helping someone else to be an independent author, and you could help each other out, So my point to say all of that is, when you go out there, no matter what discipline you are in, don't be afraid to tell people what you do, what you love, what your limitations are, what your strengths are, because you never know who is going to help you and who you are going to help.
Yes, such good points. And, creative types tend to feel more introverted, and also maybe a little intimidated by the business side, and think, well, I can't network. I can't. But what James is saying is spot on. Just be who you are, because there's only one you. And whatever stage you're in, just keep going, because you are the best you in that moment, right?
Right.
And you're going to grow. You're going to continue to learn. And I do feel upset when people say, well, I could never do that. I could never do that, especially if they're artistic and they want to paint or they want to write. And I say, you can do it. You can absolutely do what it is you want to do creatively. Block out the noise and just welcome being really bad at something. Embrace it, because it's the only way you're going to get through it, is to be really bad at something and learn it. And networking is important. Speak up, talk about your passion. You may get a bunch of people that aren't interested, but trust me, it's going to take just one that says, hi, I resonate with that. I dig that. I can go there. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for my networking. And gosh, did I feel really awkward doing my first event? You bet I did. Absolutely. But I did it anyway, even though I was nervous and anxious and all that. But my very first presentation, that's the other thing, as I do audiobook presentations on A through Z with a colleague of mine who's a male narrator, so he brings a different perspective. Anyway, my very first presentation, there were maybe 6 people in the audience. But one I formed a relationship with, and this author introduced me to a writing group, and that writing group introduced me to a publishing firm. I'm now the consultant for that publishing firm. And in one of those meetings, I met James.
Yes.
I also met the wonderful author, Gabby Coatsworth, and I just finished narrating her book. All from one presentation with 6 people in the audience. And
all it takes is one.
All it takes is one.
Mm-hmm.
And just believe in yourself and know you are the best, that where you are at right now is the best. And you are enough. That's the key.
Yes, you are enough.
You are enough, no matter where you are.
Could you let my audience know, anybody who's an aspiring audiobook narrator, how the process is? How would they go about doing that, getting into that profession?
Yeah, absolutely. The most important thing is to get coaching from a reputable coach. Finding someone who resonates with you. So you may go, a lot of coaches will give a free consultation. Go and seek out 2 or 3 and get a vibe for them and a fit, and be very specific with your goals. So you may want to do voiceover. There's so many different genres to it, but if you're looking at audiobook narration, there's a really great resource. It's called the Narrator's Roadmap. And if you Google Narrator's Roadmap, you will find it. It was produced by Karen Cummins, and it is basically everything you need to know about how to become a narrator. All the resources are right there in one place. It's a fabulous, fabulous site. But I would definitely consider volunteering reading, just to see if it's something you like doing. People think it's great, but then once they get into it, they realize how hard it is.
It's daunting. It's very daunting. Yes, it is.
It is really daunting. Yeah. Reach out to people like me and say, hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee? I'd be happy to sit down and talk with you about it for a couple minutes, or go to a presentation. Again, there's a lot of conferences. I went to conferences even before I started. I went to a conference and just was like a fly on the wall, just observing. There's a couple of Facebook groups dedicated to audiobook narration. Go on them, learn from them. Don't necessarily post on them, because that is something you want to just absorb information. But don't crowdsource your questions. Go to a specific coach in audiobook narration and have one-on-one training. Definitely.
Okay, that's great.
Pricing. I did want to go over the pricing, because that's a big thing for authors.
Pricing to get consulted to get it to
No, authors, I feel a lot of indie authors shy away from audiobook narration because they know it's expensive. So there's different pricing structures. There's the per finished hour, and that's where it can get really pricey. If you just don't have the resources, a lot of authors will say, I can't do it. But there are 2 other options. One is royalty share. And the royalty share is the narrator will narrate the book. It goes out, it's distributed, and now you share the royalties on the sale of that book. Okay?
So that means the author don't pay upfront?
Exactly.
Okay.
Royalty share plus is a royalty share deal, but you do pay a little upfront so that the narrator can pay their proofer and their engineer. So that's also something that you can negotiate. And that seems really fair, especially if you're starting out and, a narrator's willing to do your work for a royalty share plus.
So with the royalty share, you mentioned the audio narrator having to pay the proofer and the editor. Will that share, if you don't choose the royalty share plus, come out of the narrator's portion of the share, or does the author have to pay for the proofing?
Well, no, the royalty share plus would be the author paying for the proofing and engineering. Royalty share means the narrator's paying for it, and in most cases, the narrator's probably doing the work.
Okay. So it's all in one. Okay.
Which, it's questionable because you should never proof your own stuff.
Right.
But
Okay.
a lot of narrators don't have the choice, and that's the way it works. And the author can be the proofer. And there are thousands of royalty share books out there that are excellent quality, excellent books. So I wouldn't shy away from it. I would just do your homework and choose a good narrator.
What's affordable for you? I said choose the right narrator.
Yes.
And what's affordable for
exactly.
you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whatever you can do to get that book into the audio format is really important. There are so many people that choose audiobooks now. I think it's around 54% of Americans have now listened to an audiobook. And it's just the fastest growing sector of publishing is audiobooks. So
we have to thank podcasting for that. Because people are on the go. People are either students or they are stay-at-home moms or contractors, and they don't have the time to sit down in the corner and read a book. So you can multitask. You can listen to a book, and while you're doing something else, and it'll help with your day go faster and be more entertaining. So I can see why narrating. Audiobook is fastest growing industry. Would you ever consider doing voiceover acting, like for a cartoon or a commercial?
Oh, James, I would love to do cartoons. That would be a dream. But again, the different genres of voiceover are each their own business. So you have commercial voiceover, you have audiobooks, of course, and you have anime, you have TV documentary voiceover, you have cartoons, you have video games, you have audio description, which is up and coming. Audio description is where you're watching a television program, and just like closed caption, you can pick AD, and there will be a narrator describing the scenes when there's no speaking.
Right. It's like sports.
Yes.
Okay.
So each of those genres is their own business. And at this point, I don't have the bandwidth to do to seek out those cartoons yet. But yes, that would be a dream. Absolutely.
So will you have to go into, like, for a writer, they have the guild. Will you have to go into a different guild for each denomination of voiceover acting, or is you just have to break into it and then sort of just get paid to become a professional?
I don't know the exact answer to that question. I know in the genre of voice acting, being a SAG-AFTRA member is across the board.
Okay.
But
you just need the one. Okay.
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
That's a great question. But as far as I know, that is the main one. There's NAVA, which is for the voiceover community, and that sort of protects the voiceover workers. But there's a bunch of different associations, and you look into them and see what they offer, see what the benefits are to you and your business, and you choose accordingly, for sure. But yeah, I would love to do cartoons.
There's a great market for voiceover acting. I'm a budding voiceover acting. I do some work here at After Go Radio, and I wanted to dabble because I have books. And like we mentioned earlier, to write a book is one thing and one discipline, but to read it and narrate it and get the subtle nuances of each character is something totally different. You got to get that down to a T. So I want to give you your flowers now where you can smell them. The work that you do is top notch, because to read a book, if you out there are avid readers and you approach a book and you read different characters, whatever character resonates with you, you get the voice of the character in your head and you imagine how that character would sound. And as a voiceover actor, you actually have to display that voice and that inflection in the recording. So
and
that's up to you.
I mean, that is also a good point, because it can go either way. So you have in your mind, you have envisioned what these characters sound like. But sometimes I've spoken to many authors who say, I had my book narrated and the narrator took it in a completely different direction and I loved it. So again, it's subjective because it's an art form. So I may read your book in a way that you never imagined and you like it. And that's why communication in the beginning, that communication between you and the narrator is so important. And also making sure that that 15-minute recording that you're approving is something that you're like, okay, I did this.
So if you had a project and one of the characters had an accent or spoke a different language, would you have to speak that language, or would they utilize AI in order to get that portion of the character?
Do not say AI.
No, we want to know about this information. That's what I'm asking.
No to AI.
Okay.
So an audiobook narrator is going to look at the book and they're going to say, okay, I need to have a Russian accent for this, character. If you can do that convincingly enough, yes, you would take the book. You work on your craft as it comes. So accents is something that I'm currently working on. But how authentic? Again, a question for the author. You don't want a narrator who's going to over-exaggerate an accent. You don't want them to caricature somebody. You want them to lightly touch on it and just know their stuff when it comes to accents. So again, with preparation, that is a good question. And that's a great, they may audition for the book and your audition didn't include any of those characters with accents. So it's very important that that does get included in the 15-minute recording session and that it's talked about. And also you're looking at so many different areas, right? In Ireland, what part of Ireland are they from?
That's true.
What about in England?
Right.
I mean, there's
you got
just
Cockney,
there's just such a vast variety.
Different idioms that you have to hit on.
Yes,
correctly.
exactly. So, and I think for audiobook narrators who are actors, being able to do so many different characters in a book is what makes it such a fun art form. You go in that booth and you go on a journey. And, it's not like you're an actor on a stage who's playing one part. You get to play all the parts.
As long as you don't take those characters home with you and you act out those characters to your friends and family and embody that and lose yourself in it, then you'll be fine.
You can though. I mean, sometimes I'll base a character off my uncle or, a friend. I'll just read about them and I'll say, that sounds a lot like so-and-so. But it's really playing the personality, not the voice, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Okay. So again, you want to not go overboard with your voice. You don't want to abuse your vocal cords and you don't want to sound shrilly or, off the cuff. Like for a male narrator doing a female voice, they don't have to go really high in falsetto. The listener knows you're a male narrator doing a female voice and they will accept it. They do. The listeners are very forgiving. But if you take them out of the story by doing, a typical female falsetto voice, then you're going to lose them.
Yeah, what is he doing?
How many women have deep voices?
Yeah, some.
Millions, come on.
Yeah.
So anyway, so again, indie authors out there, if you're looking to hire a narrator, make sure you talk with them. Well, yeah, I'm happy to help. I may not be the right voice for your project, but just vet out your narrators really well and ask for recommendations. Maybe some of your indie author friends have narrated a book. Ask what their experience was like with their narrator. That's also a great way to find somebody. But yes, I'm always willing to help. If I'm not the right voice, I will definitely walk you through.
All right. Before we close out, is there any words of wisdom you have out there for my audience?
Oh gosh, not really. Not that I haven't said. For aspiring creatives, aspiring artists, whether you're a narrator or a writer or a painter, again, there's only one of you. So just be you and you're enough.
All right. Your website before we close out?
Yes, it's www.lauraenglishvo.com.
.com.
Yes.
And this was a pleasure. mine.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. This was very fun, lighthearted, and we shared a lot of information with my audience out there. So those of you who are aspiring audiobook narrators, you can go the route that Miss English has done, or go out there and network. And on that note, my name is James Dale. This is the lovely Laura English, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us next time on Creative